Well, it's August 11th, and Elias Lindholm, Noah Hanifin, and Michael Backlund are all still part of the Flames roster. Are we running it back with them or not?
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I'm your host, Jess Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me here today on this Friday edition of Locked On Flames. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon to start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. Today, we are going to be talking about the Flames, obviously, the roster construction and the lack of moves, and why this might not be as bad as people are thinking and fearing for, validly, rightfully concerned for. But I'm here to kind of, remind everyone that it's not always all that bad, but it's also not always all that good. So make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you're getting your podcast. And of course, we are here for you throughout the off season. And thank you so much for sticking with us as we make our way through August. Erik Karlsson has been a Penguin for nearly a week now, right? So why haven't the Noah Hanifin conversations picked up, since apparently that was the domino that needed to fall before Hanifin moved? I think a lot of that is just pure speculation, in my opinion. I think that, with no real answer from Elias Lindholm, are the Flames really going to move all of these players before the start of the season? No, it doesn't look like it either. And again, no answer from Lindholm. Hanifin wants to go back to America. Who wants them? Who wants Noah Hanifin? He would be great to anyone's defense. But let's say that they both stay for the season, at least to start the season. This is a decent roster. I will say, this is a decent roster. Cracked 93 points last season, and again, that is more than the Florida Panthers had with 92. Of course, the Flames did not make the playoffs, let alone the Stanley Cup final, but they did endure 17 overtime losses, which, I've heard that builds character. And not always good character, but, the resilience, strength, grit, whatever they teach you in hockey, right? But on top of those struggles, the goaltending was, not that great. It was abysmal, if you will. You can call it abysmal. But the good news is that there's no way that it repeats itself, because it was just so bad. Like, you cannot replicate that. It would be virtually impossible. I think if you were going into this with two new goaltenders, sure, that don't know Calgary's system and were, kind of getting acclimated to Calgary, kind of like Huberdeau and Weegar were last season, I think that would be more realistic. But right now, you have Jacob Markstrom, who wants to win and admitted that he sucked last season, and he is not going to have a repeat of last season. Haven't really heard much from Dan Vladar, other than, he didn't have a good season either. I figured he would have been on the move by now as well. I know I've said that a lot, really since the draft, but good news is good goaltending will solve a majority of your problems here. If this team can stop one or two more goals a night, at least one, they might, be on a really good track. And I think that's what the Flames need. They really just need to turn this thing around. And that's going to be great and very easy to do when your old fourth line is no longer being iced. There is no more Brett or Nick Ritchie. There is no more Trevor Lewis, and there is no more Milan Lucic. you can finally integrate younger players on the ice that offer speed, offense, something, and they're not just a doormat going out there and eating 10 to 12 minutes a night. Not happening. And I think that it's important to remember that, Pelletier probably isn't a fourth line player, but it's, again, very important for him to get acclimated to the NHL at some capacity, because that did not happen last year. In my opinion, he missed a full year of true NHL development because Daryl Sutter was so stubborn. Adam Ruzicka is another guy that I'm really looking forward to seeing again. I think that he brings something to the Flames roster that not a lot of players can bring. And it's one of those intangibles that I can't quite put my finger on, but it's like he stabilizes the roster or whatever line he's on. He has this ability to, control. There's a control when he has the puck or his line has the puck. He's great. And I really do think that Walker Dewar getting another real chance is going to be wonderful. I think it's going to do great things here for the Flames roster. It's not rocket science. There are younger players that needed to be integrated into your roster last year and even the year before, and that wasn't happening. Now there's room for it to happen with no excuse why it's not happening. And I really do think that plays a role into why Craig Conroy has not gone out and done more. He can't. There's like $2 million in cap space, if that. He knows that if he's going to be moving anything, it's going to be players that will be the pending UFAs. Bringing younger guys up is going to be helpful. It's going to be important. So you just have to roll with it. They're not committing to the rebuild, and they're saying they're still going to be competitive. So we're just going to see how that works and how this roster could even be competitive. But before we move on to the meat and potatoes of things here, of this roster construction here at Locked On Flames, let me tell you about betting NFL on FanDuel this season. Football season is about to kick off, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. Because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. Don't bet on the Cowboys. That I can be a surefire bet for you right there. Do not bet on them. Do not bet on the Patriots. Do not bet on the Buccaneers. Not good. But you can use your bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. And thank you, everyone, for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. I greatly appreciate you sticking around through the off season. I know it's been a long one, but we're inching closer and closer, and that's always a good sign. It is the middle of August, basically, almost there. If this team is starting the season with essentially the same roster, how do you sell people on being competitive? What makes this roster different from what it was, at the end of April? Or really not even the end of April, the beginning of April, end of March, right? You don't really have any significant subtractions besides Tyler Toffoli, who was your goal-scoring leader last season. Where is your offense coming from? Because I know you are not counting on Igor Sharangovich to score 30 goals next season. That's just not happening. I am a betting woman, and I would bet that would not happen. I mean, he supposedly can put up 20 a season. Let's see it. I don't think that he will or should be playing on the first line, but again, that is just me. I don't see it. But I do think that this team is strong down the center. I really do think that they are built pretty well down the center. You have Lindholm, you have Kadri, you have Backlund, and then you have Ruzicka, you could put Kevin Rooney, you could put is Connor Zary. I think he's more of a winger, but if you have to, you can get creative there. I don't really think that it's worth tinkering too much with a young player's game, especially one that did miss a full year of development because of a broken leg. I think that going with what and what they've kind of worked on their entire career is just the safer option right now, at least to start the season. If things do start getting shaky, then of course, you shake it up, you find new ways, you get creative, right? I think that this is really a matter of finding complementary wingers here. That is essential roster construction. It does not take a genius to figure that out, but if Kadri and Huberdeau are both playing at elevated levels than they were last season, things are going to be okay. I'm not saying they're going to be able to carry the whole team, but I do think that with less restrictions, they will be able to do more. I think that Ryan Huska is going to, I wouldn't say give them freedom to do whatever they want, but I really think it's going to be more of a, what are you comfortable with and how can I coach to that instead of coaching you to a level you don't play at and something you don't understand. I am interested to see where these new developments about Elias Lindholm supposedly wanting to stay take us. Again, the source that came from is not one that really has much credibility. He's better than he has been in years past, but there was no source from Calgary confirming it. None of, Julian McKenzie from The Athletic, quite literally anyone else on the internet confirming it. So don't, again, take it with a grain of salt. But I do think that this team here really does need to figure this out. I think that is a given. But with Lindholm, I think if he does decide to stay, the pressure of playing on a contract year is going to be taken off of him. Let's say he signs that extension Monday morning, whatever, before camp, during camp even. He's going into the season not stressing about, I have to play at this top level because I am trying to come into generational money here. I'm trying to play for the biggest contract of my life. I need to be a player that I might not be. And if I stumble, then I'm not going to get what I could potentially deserve or what I could potentially make. So, having that anxiety and those questions and variables off the table could be a very good thing, right? It could be a solid breath of fresh air off of Elias Lindholm. Actions are always going to speak louder than words, especially in these situations. I think that the Flames really do need to go out there and just give it their all. There's no reason why they shouldn't have an uptick in production across the board. I was looking at the third line and how last season they had 54 goals combined. I didn't think it was that many, but it was. It was. But the thing for me is that it needs to be more. Andrew Mangiapane has a $5.9 million cap hit. Start playing like it. I mean, I'm just going to be honest. What he gave us last season was not $6 million a year hockey. That's not what we saw. I get it. It was a down year for everyone, unless your name's Tyler Toffoli. But that has to change. And Blake Coleman, again, still has a few more years left on his contract here with a full no trade clause. How are we going to continue to make the most out of this line? How are we going to see that dynamic two-way game that they play if Michael Backlund decides to leave, if they do trade him? What are their plans? And I also wonder here if that's part of the reason why they haven't moved him yet, because they don't have an alternative. They don't have a plan. They don't have a plan. And could that be because they are going into this cleaning up somebody else's mess? Potentially. Or could it just be that no one has an idea of what they're doing? I don't know. I do trust Craig Conroy. I think that he was brought in for the right reasons. I don't think that the organization would have just brought him in to bring him in. They interviewed a ton of different candidates, and they went with, a safe option. Safe isn't always a bad thing. But speaking of defense here, I do think that the Flames defense really it held the team together as much as it could last season. Mackenzie Weegar and Rasmus Andersson are two solid defensemen. And I think anyone would love to have either of them on their team because they just play such a shutdown game. It's very easy to, just watch them when they're on the ice because you're just fascinated by how they control that blue line. And I love it. I love watching them, whether it be special teams or 5-on-5. Like, you're watching such great defense there. And not only just from those two, but, a healthy Chris Tanev could do wonders for this team. I think that's going to be nice to look forward to, especially, this is the last season potentially of his career. I don't know. I feel like this man's going to play till his limbs are just falling off completely. So he might get another contract somewhere else after this, but it's going to be very nice as well to have Oliver Kylington back. A lot of people are really excited about that, and as they should. He was a very good integral part of the team the year that they saw success, and he's taken care of himself, and he has done what he needs to do to get back on the ice. And I'm looking forward to seeing how Ryan Huska decides to utilize him. I want to see Tanev and Kylington back together because they were such a dynamic pair. I don't know what we're going to do with Noah Hanifin. I figured that plan would have been executed by now, but, people saying that there were talks between Pittsburgh and the Flames regarding Hanifin, and 3 days later, Erik Karlsson was traded there, and amazing how that happens. But this team does have one of the most underappreciated defenses in the league. Again, they shine through. Like I said, they were the glue that attempted to hold this team together last season, and they did the best they could, and that's that. And I'm looking forward to see how they play this year, under new coaching styles and whatnot. I think it's going to be an interesting time for the Flames overall roster, not just the defense. Coming up next, we are going to talk about the coaching challenges that are presented, that have been presented on a soggy paper plate to Ryan Huska and his coaching staff, because there is not much attractive about the mess that he's coming to clean up. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. You can follow me on Twitter at Jess Belmosto. While I did just say that, there's not a ton of instant attractiveness to this roster, I do think that there are some flashy parts to it. Like I mentioned before, you get the goaltending going, and you might be saved a little bit. You have Rasmus Andersson and Mackenzie Weegar, who are both just incredible defensemen. And the reality is the Flames are not going to come in red hot. They're not going to start the season, 5-2-0 through the first 7 games, and then they went on a 7-game skid. It's not going to happen. If it does, then I would be concerned, because they're gonna it's quicker to decline that way. And it's not sustainable. I think that the long off season is just naturally going to take a toll on a player. It's not, rest is great, but it also takes a little bit to shake the cobwebs off, to get reacclimated, and to figure out this coaching style. It doesn't have to be a bad thing by any means, but just trying to figure out where your coach is coming from and how you can improve and play to their vision. And what is your vision? You have to figure out, okay, maybe I need to work on this more Where am I spending more time? Have we thought about switching this up? There are so many decisions that Ryan Huska and his coaching staff have to make now. I don't think that disassembling the power play units would be worth anyone's time. Do I think making some tweaks? Potentially, sure. I think that the lines in general could really use a little tweaking. They need to be tweaked. And if, you start the season with this pretty much the same roster, what wasn't working? What can you do to get Jonathan Huberdeau to at least 85 points? At least 85 points with that $10.5 million contract. What are you going to do to kick off Andrew Mangiapane's offense again? What are you going to do to figure out this gosh darn forsaken power play? It wasn't horrendous, but it was bad. There were definitely moments it was just abysmal last season. Penalty kill really wasn't that bad. I feel like, just like anything, it's going to struggle, but at the end of the day, it didn't struggle as bad as even strength or the power play. So Marc Savard is really going to be a delight to have as part of this coaching staff, because he is focusing on the power play. How many times am I going to say power play in the last 8 minutes of this show? But he's going to be focusing on that and the offense. And if there's one person that I trust to rejuvenate any part of this team, it is Marc Savard. Marc Savard is a player that unfortunately had his career ended far too early. And I think that he has a great mind to, again, get that vision across and execute what he wants. And players just have to trust him. That's not always easy, but at this point, you've had all summer to get acclimated with these changes. People, phone calls have been made. Meetings have been held. So I think at the end of the day, it really is up to the players to embrace this change in Calgary, because it was done for them, and I'm not saying that they, the organization owed them anything. They did owe them this, and they don't owe the organization anything other than at least trying this out. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just try to give it a chance. I hope to see this, as a, not going to say Stanley Cup contender, but could they make the second round of the playoffs? I don't know. I don't know as of this moment. But if everything I talked about today, good goaltending, getting Mangiapane back on track, Huberdeau finding his game again, Igor scoring 20 plus goals, that would be good. I can't wait to see players like Matthew Coronato, Jacob Pelletier, make a difference on this team. I'm excited to watch that fourth line for once, because it's not going to be a bunch of old men, doormats disguised as hockey players. But that does it for me here today on Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jess Belmosto, and thank you so much for hanging out with me today. And you can follow me on Twitter at Jess Belmosto, and follow the show wherever you get your podcasts, and I will see you next time.